So let me start by saying that having lived in Toronto for a while, Canadians are quiet but fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
We're not as nice as people think we are.
ultimately. But I think that one of the things, why am I here? Why are we doing this conversation? Well, Ryan and I buy at the same big and tall store our clothes. And we met, we met a few years ago, and we met about a project. We were talking about it. We met at Bleak House, which is my sort of strange man cave circuit of books and monsters and this and that. And you know, we really hit it off in a big way. And he showed me then his photographs and his ideas for this movie, and I fell in love with the project back then. And it was. It's rare that a director shows you his project and then you see the film, and it's exactly the film that it was pitched those years before. And we will talk about this. But the main drive for me was for you guys to have a context of the filmmaker and not the meme that says, "Hey girl." You know, it's like, because the film was made by the filmmaker. And and honestly, I think that there are many rape choices about the film. Most of the time, when an actor-director debuts, he puts himself in one role to make the movie more commercial, more sellable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the first choice. And the second, which is very important, is this is a guy with an actor trajectory that decides not to make a straight movie. He didn't do a melodrama, a heist movie, a drama. He goes for something that is completely personal to him. So let me. You told me a story. You're still on the
this
meme?
kind of stuff that got me into this mess.
You're still on the meme.
No, but you have to understand that Guillermo is just like so. He's such an inspiring filmmaker and friend and
trainer
and like just a little context, like this Bleak House that he's talking about is this sort of cabinet of curiosities. It's a museum of the macabre. It's like his house is built on some kind of bedrock of dark magic, and anything is possible in this house. There's even a room where it rains all the time. And everything comes to life and follows you around and watches you, and it's pretty magical, and everything seems possible. So when you're sitting there with Guillermo and you're pitching him this movie idea you have, you know, he actually, you said something to me, which, I don't know, do I talk to you? I'm going to talk to you. All right, you guys talk amongst yourselves. I told this idea to Guillermo, and he said, if you don't direct it, I'm going to direct it myself. And I don't think you meant that.
I did.
But something about you saying that I just thought was the coolest thing you could say. And, you know, it was like, I felt like the wizard had given me my sword and my shield and sent me off on this quest. So it's amazing to be back here now, sitting with you in similar chairs.
Similar.
I think your chairs are like actual monster hands or something, but... and talking about it. So thank you so much for doing this and for encouraging me to make the film.
But when we talked about the film the first time, I mean, there were very little variations from the finished film. You always talked about it as a sort of neon-colored fairy tale, like a neo-punk fairy tales of some sort. You talked about finding the magic in the ruins of a society, you know, and I think that you did that through color, through composition, through rhythm, and all that. But it also related obliquely to your childhood in a way. You were talking back then about a ghost being part of the story, but obliquely it relates to you very personally, and that I think you grew up in a household where the female figure, your mother, was central to it, and held the family, but also you sort of saw the magic in the world. Why don't you talk a little bit about this very personal view you had of the fairy tale as a genre and of the characters of the film? How did you write them so they relate to you?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to cry,
No.
if that's what you're after.
I cried a few minutes ago.
No, I think that in a way you're talking about my mother. My mother's very beautiful, and she was a single mom, and so I think when you're a kid and you have a single mom, that in a way, all men feel like wolves, and I remember walking with my mother, and guys would whistle at her, or cars would start, they'd circle, and it's very predatory. And it's very threatening, especially if you're a young kid and you don't feel like if something went sideways that you could do anything about it, or so you start to imagine all these versions in which you could, and it just ignites your imagination in a way, and you kind of, I think, see the world in a slightly sort of, you see it through the filter of your imagination, I guess. So on a side note, when I went to also, but growing up as a kid, I'm from Canada, and I'm not too far. Well, Detroit's not too, bless you. Detroit, it kind of loomed large in its legend. When you're a Canadian kid, America's like a bit of a pinup girl you put in your locker, and I had all these fantasies about it, and Detroit embodied those things, Motown, the Model T, the American dream, really. And it took me a long time to get there. I think I went when I was 30, but it's very different now than how I had imagined it. And it really affected me. At that time when I was there was like 40 miles of abandoned buildings, and people burning houses faster than the city could tear them down, and in some
just as a hobby.
As a hobby, or in some cases it's cheaper to burn it down than to tear it down. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons to do it, but it's very surreal. And then within that, there are still families living in these neighborhoods, and I was driving around and I saw this one family that felt like they were the only family for blocks, burnt out houses around them, and just sort of trying to carry on with their lives. And I thought, those people must feel like they're the only people left at times, and in some cases there's not water running to those neighborhoods, the police don't come, there's not power to the street lights. And so it for me, I knew I wanted to make a film there, and it was about figuring out what and how. But I thought I should make something not specifically about Detroit, because I didn't want the film to get trapped in the minutia of the political reasons for why it is that way, and just sort of try and tap into the way it feels, because there's something about it that feels more universal than just what's happening to Detroit. And I thought a fairy tale format might be the simplest way to sort of connect to what was so affecting and kind of heartbreaking about it.
But what is interesting to me is that it is actually counterintuitive in so many ways, because you dreamt of America. One, I agree, is a night for his mother when he's a child, and when one is a child, and then you imagine America in one way. You find it sort of an enchanted kingdom put to sleep by some horrible spell, and then you say, okay, I'm going to make a fairy tale, and I think that is actually incredibly brave, incredibly smart, but it is not the easiest solution. It is not, in order to gratify an audience, finding the easiest conduit to box office, or you are. I mean, we've known each other now for a few years. We have sort of the same kind of esoteric taste on film, and we are united by a very strange love of Disneyland. Very, very huge love of Disney, but we also love some twisted, weird, strange stuff, strange horror films and all that. And I think that that's why I felt the kinship there. But you did this by choosing very carefully a group of people, and one of them that I find very important into achieving the fairy tale effect, and then we'll talk about tone, which is very important in this movie, but is your cinematographer. Now, can you talk about him and anybody on your core group, how you approach them, but him first if you can, and how you arrived together to this aesthetic and all that?
Well, it's true, like you say. I mean, in the beginning, it felt like a fairy tale was the easiest way to try and capture this feeling. But in reality, it's a very, very small target to hit, and a lot of times, you feel like you're aiming at it in the dark, you know. And so much of what gives you the confidence to keep going is that you have people around you that believe it's out there. You know, they may not see the target, but we're all aiming in the same direction. And so I had some really incredible collaborators, and Benoit Deby, who's my cinematographer and one of the best cinematographers in the world, and
Gaspar Noé,
and he's worked with he did Spring Breakers with Harmony Korine, but he's had a long career of incredible work. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. And really, when I was like in my early 20s, I wrote this script about child soldiers. And I sent it to him. I found a way to get it to him. And he agreed, you know. He came and met me, and he said, "I'm in." And I really didn't think he'd even answer me. And I wasn't in a place in my life or my career to actually get that made. That's a really hard film.
How young were you?
I think I was like, I don't know, 25. And I wasn't able to sort of make good on that. I couldn't get anyone to finance it, and I just couldn't make it happen. And I was really, it meant a lot to me that he believed in it, and I just kind of was determined to work with him. So as soon as I wrote this, I sent it to him, and again, he was in. And he works in a really beautiful way, in a way that that really suited the film. You know, first of all, he'll only shoot on film, which is not the easiest thing to convince people of anymore, but it's certainly appropriate for this film. And you know, we didn't want to use any lights. We shot on these T1 lenses that are very fast, and we lit things practically. And there was a concern that the movie would be too dark, but in our minds, it would be like what it feels like to be there, which is dark and beautiful,
full of colors,
and full of color and beautiful, and not feel affected, because the idea is, like, you know, there's a very surreal quality about some people are living in these pockets, and we tried to tap into that and not affect that too much. And the idea was, how far into fantasy can we take this film without going over the edge and making it an officially like a fantasy film, you know? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of seen through the filter of these kids who are trying to romanticize their situation. You know, it's easier for them to believe that they live in this place that because there's some evil spell on it. It makes it a more romantic notion that bands them together, as opposed to, it's like just an economic fuckstorm, you know? So it was finding a way to tap into that. And so shooting on film, you know, shooting without lights, keeping it very, you know, we did have certain lights, like in the fantasy world, we kind of tried to bring color into it. But
you have the lights, and the light from the TV becomes surreal.
Right.
The lights from the bicycles that have lights. I mean, you're yet to see it here, but it does capture that sort of Mario Bava fairy tale quality that you were interested, that made you probably cast Barbara Steele.
Yeah.
But, let me ask you about that. Before, and this is important for me to annotate, one of the things that impressed me when he was talking to me about the project is how thoroughly prepared you were. I mean, how many, I don't want to quote a number, but you showed me what felt like hundreds of photographs of on-ground research and many, many days, hours with the people in those neighborhoods, where you interviewed them, wrote character traits and so forth. How long was your research for the idea before even the screenplay?
Well, I took a few. I just over the course of a year, I took a few. I just kept going back to New York to Detroit with new. Well, like first I started taking photographs with my phone, and then I went back with a 5D, and then I went back and I bought a Red camera, and then the final time I went back, I went with the crew. But it was a slow process, and for me, like I just, in the end, I wanted to shoot these buildings because they were tearing them down. You know, there's so many historic buildings that are gone now. You know, for instance, the like one thing that's a set piece of the movie is the Motown projects where Diana Ross and the Supremes grew up, and that's I think gone now. Also, just family's home. You could walk into a house and it looked like everyone had just disappeared. You know, there were still family photos on the table and clothes in the drawer, and these things were all being torn down. So I wanted to shoot them before they were gone. Interesting, there's one theater, the Palace Theater, which is the first place that the Stooges ever played. And I did in Detroit, and I shot with my Red like a panning shot from the top revealing the stage, and there's a hole in the stage, and I thought, if I ever make this film, like I want my lead character to appear out of that hole. And a year later, we went back and shot the close-up, and so there's a year in between those two shots in the movie. But so it gave me the feeling of that I'm making this film. It wasn't like I was preparing for the film. I felt
waiting.
Or waiting. It felt like the train had left the station, and I was making it, and it made it easier to show people like not what it could be, but what it was. To say that this is the film, and.
But all in all, how many years do you think went by from the seed of the idea to today, let's say? 3 or 4?
I think 3.
Yeah, and during that time, the evolution of your casting ideas, how did you always wanted Barbara Steele? Who you had in mind?
Well, Barbara kind of came, you know, we needed somebody because our character doesn't speak in the film, but we needed someone who represented the mystery of the story, and somebody who had sort of had, whose ripple effect, even though they were only in a few scenes, would kind of ripple throughout the whole movie. And it's just, I mean, Barbara Steele. You got to get Barbara. I mean, if you can get Barbara Steele, you know, she's just such a powerful presence and an amazing actress, and she has the real dark magic herself. So we were just so lucky to get her. And you know, I think it started. I mean, it was a different casting process with everybody. With Ian, for instance, we used a website called Cast It, which is amazing because you don't have to have an agent to audition, and anybody who's on this website can audition, and so you get these like wildly intimate, you know, auditions. Either people auditioning on the camera on their computer, or sometimes like really beautifully shot short films. You know, you really get a sense of this person, and it's not like a generic process. And Ian just was so. I asked all the guys auditioning for the role to do 2 things: to say that Robert Frost poem from The Outsiders, "Nothing Gold Can Stay," and to dance. And it's a pretty annoying things to ask. Like I would hate to be asked those things. What's that?
Why dance?
I just think you could see like what song they picked, how they dance. Like you could just tell a lot by how somebody dances.
I would never be cast. I can only do the robot. Horribly, by the way.
And then the Robert Frost thing was like, it was just like I wanted to find somebody that wasn't going to say that, you know, in an emotional way. That was just going to kind of read it, like without any salt and pepper, you know, because it's kind of and Ian just read that poem like he had to read it for school, you know. He just hated doing it, and he did it resentfully, and I thought that was exactly what I was looking for. And you know, there wasn't a performer in there for him, you know, and there's something just so beautiful about Ian because he
that's in the essence of the character.
Yeah, he's selfless, and he gives the scenes to all the other actors. He wants to find a way to highlight what they're doing that's great, and it's beautiful quality. And even when he danced, you know, he did a waltz by himself with this imaginary girl, and he kept leaving the frame for like minutes on end, you know, and he just really made you want, like, when's he gonna come back? And he just had me, and then he showed up to Detroit, and he went, you know, so his character in the film scraps. A way to make money there is to scrap these old buildings for all their copper or metal and sell it. So they're literally stripping these buildings to the bone, and it's very dangerous. And Ian, you know, he's Scottish, so he's crazy. He's crazy too, and tough as nails. But he went out and scrapped for a month with these guys
on his own.
On his own, and he just brought an authenticity to it that was that the movie really benefited.
Now, one of the things, and we'll continue talking about casting through that. One of the things I love that you did that made all these characters archetypal in the fairy tale way was their names. They were strictly fairy tale names tied to their function. You know, it was like saying the princess, the knight, the evil witch. You know, they were mouse, bully. You know, each of them had sort of a name that defined in a Grimm's fairy tale kind of way. But I think that then the way you cast was surprising for me, for example, for the part of bully. Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Matt Smith is in this film, and
Dr. Fucking Who.
Dr. Fucking Who. Dr. Fucking
Not the person that pops to my mind when I say I'm going to cast a Detroit bully, you know?
Well, I was watching this, I was watching TV, and suddenly I saw Matt Smith as Dr. Fucking Who. And he was screaming. He had a microphone. He was screaming to the sky, kind of commanding all these spaceships and telling them, you know, telling them what's what and laying the smack down. And I was like, first of all, that was amazing. But second of all, can you imagine being on set and seeing that guy do that when nothing's there? He would have looked insane. And just the conviction to go for it like he did and to be as convincing. And so I started kind of rewriting the part with him in mind, this idea of
before you approach him.
Yeah, of a guy who wants to be king of a place where there are no subjects and gets his friend to drive him around in like a homemade Pope mobile and has a microphone and, you know, and lords over his non-existent subjects. And so Matt read it, and he was all in, and then he came to Detroit as well, and he shaved his head, and he found this. Actually, we didn't have a lot of money for clothes, so my girlfriend and myself and the costume designer went out to these like thrift stores, and we each got to get a couple garbage bags of clothes. And my girlfriend found this gold sequin jacket, which we didn't know what the hell that would be for, but we put it in a room and we let the actors go in and pick their own stuff. And Matt saw that gold sequin jacket, and he saw destiny staring him in the face.
It was Charlie Chaplin finding the cane. No, but I think that then let's talk a moment about Mouse.
Rat.
Yeah.
Rat, yeah. So Rat is, you know, they call her Rat because she's got a pet rat. And, you know, she's kind of living like a rat. You know, her grandmother is Barbara Steele, and she's a hoarder, and she's kind of has these little tunnels that she's built for herself.
A maze of debris
through this house, and her best friend is a rat, and you know, it's played by Saoirse Ronan, who I'd worked with when I was I almost worked with. I almost played her father a long time ago, and when we got to set, I was 25 and she was 14, and it just didn't work. You know, I thought I gained 50 pounds. I just drank Haagen-Dazs and tried to get I thought if I could. Anyway, it didn't work out.
I'm so happy you
That's
think about
story.
This as fatherly. I follow the same method. I drink Haagen-Dazs for every movie. Amy's ice cream I would prefer, but so you thought of her.
But I felt like I felt like she's the best. You know, she's so special, and and I felt like paternal to her, like a brother or something. I just even though that never happened. So I thought when I wrote this role, I thought, you know, you just want to look out for her, you know. She's so special. She's such a little gem that she's precious, you know, and your instinct is to protect her or look out for her. And so I thought, you know, this Bones character, Ian's character, is the boy next door on account of like the houses between them have been torn down or burnt down. And I just knew that if it was Sxsw, you know, that you could understand the lengths that he goes to look out for her.
There is also then you cast the youngest kid, and that is he was completely a non-actor, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
it's kind of like what I heard it was like to work with Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. Like he was 4. Was he 4? And
oh my God,
he didn't. Turns out he did not like the camera, and like when he saw it, he would just go the other way. And so we had to kind of become like nature photographers, you know, like I had watched like that Animal Planet, you know, and like those guys hiding in the tree for weeks, like waiting for the bird to come out and do the mating dance. And we did that. I mean, we hid in bushes with long lenses, just like waiting to get him on camera. But my God, it was worth it because he's he's Marlon Brando. I mean, he's the most fascinating person to watch.
But he didn't do the mating dance, did he?
He did not, thank God.
Okay, all right.
But it dictated the way it really changed the whole style of the film because we had to adapt to the fact that we had to hide, you know? Yeah. And, but my God, it was like on the day, it was like, you know, we couldn't, what are we going to do? But he was just so good and he's so real and so special that it was worth all of it.
But at the same time, this leads me back to tone and image, because the film, I mean, one of the things that I've found through the years producing or directing that is the hardest to achieve is tone. And I think the movie is tonally completely of a piece, you know. And the fact that you as a director had to face all those issues that dictate the aesthetic of a film. A lot of times when you read a review, favorable or not, you read a review that talks about an affectation in the style, and you would like to have a coffee and say, I was shooting through the bushes with a long lens, or whatever the circumstance may be, you know. It's not, you know, no rain when the replicant lets the dope go. It really is dictated by the day, and the fact that you face that as a director, and yet you manage to keep the tone of the movie completely organic is very much dictated by your rhythm, but by another piece of important collaboration, which was music and sound design. I think the movie has a magical quality that you did with the soundscape. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, so my composer is Johnny Jewell. He's here today and looking very unimpressed. No, he's been involved since almost like since when I told you about it. He was one of the first people that I sent the script to, and you know, it was great. I had this. I sent it to him. I didn't know what he was going to think, and he read it. And an hour later, I think he texted me, and he said, "Dark Goonies, cool, I'm in." And I just thought, yeah, Dark Goonies, all right. You know, let's start there. That's good. And because the truth was that when I was out shooting these on my own, I was listening to his music. His music just has a very specific feeling in that it has like these very like threatening undertones with these wildly romantic like melodies, and it feels like sonic weather or something. It doesn't, you know, they don't feel like songs, and they feel like score, and the music just became a part of the image for me. And so it helped me shoot, and it helped me understand what I was doing, and it was just kind of a part of the world in its inception.
But this is what I think is purely the director's job is 50% work, investigation, blah blah blah. Another half is pure intuition. I think our job, I think, is arrangers. We are almost like those birds that go into the world and grab a piece of glass, bring it back, and then they go get a little piece of metal and put it next to it and move it around. That's what we do. And I think you choosing him, you feeding off the music in pre-production is a very intuitive way of keeping the movie in tone and keeping it under control while you're shooting against all these adversities. And I think that's one of the things that I also loved in the film is the rhythm of the characters and the actors, the way they deliver the lines. There is no affectation to them. I mean, each of them may be a different part of the world, but they are telling it exactly as it is. There is no either postmodern wink or postmodern surrealism. You drink from the environment and you let the actors be real about it.
Well, I think one of the things that I really admired about them is because we were shooting in these neighborhoods, a lot of the people in the neighborhoods just, they
Grow up.
They were just going to show up, and in a way they're living it, and so in some cases we found ourselves in a few situations where the actors, it was just easier to let anyone who showed up be in the movie as opposed to try and keep them out, and the actor's job then became to try and, because the movie is a slightly heightened reality, it is a fairy tale, and they had to try and weave these strangers into the reality of the movie. And so it's that, I mean...
Strangers that, by the way, by take 7, they want to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, or they give you one take.
Or they give you one take, yeah.
There was one case we were shooting in a gas station, and the gas station was, I think they were selling something else at the gas station. And some people really wanted it, and they didn't want to wait, couldn't wait until we were done shooting, and so it got really intense, and it was sort of like, what do we do? And so at a certain point, we just said, like, fuck it, let him in the scene.
It was like 60 minutes, a drug deal on camera.
And then, but this thing happened where they were so amazing, and they were so they were just such characters you could never write or imagine, or
direct a group of extras to be.
Yeah, and they brought this. Something happened in the scene where it felt like you were watching people work without a net. You knew that you didn't know what it was. Like, hopefully in the film you feel that. Like, when you watch the scene, like you're not sure what it is, but you know that there's something. This could go south. This could go sideways. The actors are risking something here, and that's when the movie really started to come to life in those moments for me, and it was what I was hoping would happen, which is that we could sew in this what's naturally surreal about the reality there into this fairy tale. And so that became like a barometer for us. We kept looking for opportunities to bring the world in.
I think that's what I admire. I mean, I admire the movie. I can say I consider it a great movie, but an even more extraordinary first movie. And I think what I admire, the more we talk about it and the more I learn these details, is the fact that you are, I mean, we enthrone this myth of the director as the ultimate creature of control. We've been enthroning it since von Stroheim. Everybody goes, ooh, he does 70 takes, and it's fantastic. But ultimately, all directors, or 99% of the craft, is to integrate real life and what happens by accident, and I think there is a beauty into you being able to field all these things that came in and out, and then integrating into a movie that has a visual sort of it's a tonal poem, a fairy tale, yes, but it's tonally of a piece, and one of the elements that was also incredible at Howard when you pitched me the idea of water. I said to you, water on film equal hell, because anytime a camera is near water, or you're going to put someone in a boat, or the camera is going to be in a boat, or the camera is going to go underwater, by experience, you are tempting the fates. You know, the boats are gonna drift apart, the water is gonna be murky, blah blah blah. And you did all of the above on a first film, and so you were always so certain about the sunken town. Can you talk a little bit about that idea, why it was important, symbolically or practically, and how you did it?
Well, when I was in these neighborhoods filming, I was just thinking about when I was a kid, thinking of this place and where it is now, and that combined with the that there's like a submerged quality. It feels like a shipwreck. It feels like footage of the Titanic or something. You know, it feels that way, and it reminded me of this experience I had when I was a kid, where I saw this road going into the water, and I found out that there was a town at the bottom of the river that I grew up next to, and that they had made that river and they'd sunk these towns, and it scared the shit out of me. I felt like you know, I couldn't believe that I had been swimming. Like there may have been a roof or a street lamp or a graveyard. Oh, who knows what was underneath me? It was like enough to mess. I didn't want to take a bath because if that's where the water was coming from, you know. And I forgot about that, but it's kind of like it was there. And then when I saw what I was filming, you know, not to make a cheesy metaphor, but I'm going to, those images sort of flooded, that memory flooded in. And I started to think of, I'm going to regret that. I already do. And so I thought that that town and the town that I was filming started to become one in the same. And so
How did you shoot it?
The underwater town?
Yeah.
We tried a few different ways. You know, at first we thought, oh, we'll just make a cardboard town and we'll film it through a fish tank and we got this. And it was tough because everything that we were filming the visuals were so unbelievable and real and unaffected that anything you affected felt that way. It just felt phony. And
we talked on the phone about models and
it was, you could tell, you know, and it was a problem. So we didn't know really what we were going to do, and eventually what we ended up doing was we just got a little drone and we shot actual buildings from the neighborhood, and then we sort of composited them with some things that we had shot in an actual lake. But we tried everything. At one point, Benoit and I we made a little fish tank and we put soy sauce and coffee grounds in a fish tank in front of the lens, and we thought that would solve everything, you know. We spent a good 2 weeks doing that, and
but the budget was very tight. How long was your shooting schedule, and how tight did it feel?
30 days.
30 days.
30 days.
And you shot 6 days a week?
No.
Because you have a lot of nights. A lot of nights.
Yeah. We had a lot of nights, and we shot a lot of. You know, we took my red sometimes, and we just would shoot with the actors when we had some spare time, because we were trying to get things that were more intimate, you know, and more sort of just private, you know, that was hard to do in the regular environment of a film.
Now let me ask you, the experience you when you come from one part of the profession, and this is always asked of anyone that was a cinematographer, becomes a director, blah, 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 it's the same. Everybody says, how does it inform the other side, blah, 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 but that's not my question. My question is, having done this, I feel that you really enjoyed the process of making the film. Am I correct? I mean, you loved shooting it.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
So you're going to do it again?
Yeah, goddamn it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
I think that...
Well, you get, you know, it's so great.
How does it inform the other side?
You do a lot of acting as a director, though. I didn't realize that. Yes. You do more acting as a director than you do as an actor, I think. Because you're always acting confident, you know? You are. I mean, even if everything's going south, you're just like, "Psst, this is. Got this."
I look like like
the
Rodney
sun's-
Dangerfield, and it's like,
You know, like the sun's going down and you have 5 shots to get, or you don't have the money for this thing, or this not. You know, you're always acting like it's not a problem, and there's always a problem.
Now, the movie, one of the things that I found incredibly touching and beautiful, there is such reverence and love for all the characters, but particularly the female characters. I found it to be, in my appreciation of it, a movie that looks at the most improbable princess, and the prince becomes a taxi cab driver, immigrant, that is not interested in a love story or a waltz, and every princess in the story, or every queen in the story, in the case of Barbara Steele, is a downfall, a fallen one, and there is such love for these characters, and I think they are all part of the way you view the world. I don't think the only character that I think I would characterize as evil is a fucking banker, so I agree. You know, it's like, who can disagree with that? You know, I think, but there is such love for every character, and then this character is the only sort of black opposing force. I feel great compassion for it, and they are not specifically Detroit. We said that, but can you tell me a little bit of how you could relate to this character and how much of you are in those characters? Like when I write, I am every character, the good guys and the bad guys. Do you write like that?
Well, I wanted to work with my friends, and I wanted to work with people that I had worked with before. I wanted to work, you know, that way, and so everybody that was on this movie, I love them, you know, and I love them, and I love that they.
You had a baby with one of them.
I have a baby with one. That I want to show that, you know, I want to show them, and I you know. I mean, in the sense that, like, you know, there's just qualities in them that I hadn't seen them show, and you want to find a way for them. Like Ben Mendelsohn, for instance, you know, he's a human ice cream truck. I mean, when Ben Mendelsohn comes around, everybody just lights up. You know, he would come to set on Pines, this movie I did with him, and he would have a boombox. He'd be playing old school 90s hip hop and be singing it like Al Jolson. And I just wanted to find a way that he could play like a terrifying song and dance man, you know, because there's this whole other side to him as well. And so, you know, I wrote for him, I wrote, you know, for a lot of them. But then also, once someone does your film, I mean, you feel so grateful, you know, that they're giving themselves to this film, and so there's an affection there that you have for them, that you just want to do right by them and by this beautiful thing that you think is in them, you know. But the great part of the process for me was like, yeah, you write these characters, but they fill them in, you know, they bring themselves to them, and at a certain point they take ownership of them and they tell you what they would or wouldn't do.
Where do you want to go?
What's that?
Where do you want to go?
Yeah, and they start to tell you about them, and then that's when it feels the best, because it feels like you've made this handoff, and you're not really directing them. You know, you're kind of it's full-on collaboration after that.
Well, I would like to open it to a few questions, but I want to say, from my personal point of view, I think the highest praise I can give to a filmmaker, much more a first-time filmmaker, is when you see a movie and you know the person and you feel the movie perfectly embodies the person you know, and that it is a unique reflection. I don't care what influences were there or not. We can discuss that, but it is you. You know, you see the movie and it's you, and that's really the highest praise I can give you, man. So, we're gonna take some questions from you guys, if you have any, about clothing from me or fitting anything you want.
We talk over here.
Who's going first?
Yeah.
My name is Earl Dittman. This is for Ryan. Guillermo has been working now on television with The Strain on FX, which is a very artist-friendly network, which cable is becoming that way. Would you consider doing something as a director and as a writer or an actor on cable television in the future?
Yeah, for sure. You know, we've talked a lot about it. It seems like there's so much opportunity for experimentation there, and there's just so much work, so much great work going on there. So definitely, I think it's very exciting.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry I'm losing my voice, so I apologize if you can't understand me. My name's Eduardo Tobias. I'm a producer here in Austin. I graduated from film school at the Art Institute in September, so pretty excited. Guillermo, first off, mucho gusto. This has been 8 years of the making. I hope to meet you and just tell you thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. The first experience I saw of your movie was in 2006, Pan's Labyrinth, in a little tiny theater in San Antonio, Texas, in my hometown. So it was really awesome to be introduced to a whole new level of filmmaker, and to be able to meet the Hitchcock of our era, kind of, in a way.
I'm gonna give you a fucking Halls because
yeah,
I'm getting nervous.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be awesome. If you can sign that Halls, that'd be cool.
Yes, yes. I will.
No, but as a Chicano,
I feel anguished.
as a Chicano filmmaker, I just want to ask, you know, with 2 years out of the 80-something years that the Oscars have been, you know, they're the two Mexican filmmakers win Best Film Director. What is your, I guess, advice or input on the future of Mexican cinema and how it's going to influence the rest of the world, or it's the United States especially?
Well, look, the world has changed a lot from the time we started. When we started in the late 90s, I always quote this terrifying anecdote. My DP, Guillermo Navarro, whom I did 6 movies with, but he is one of the great. He won the Oscar for Pan's Labyrinth. When he was looking for representation, I'm not making this up, one of the most powerful agents of cinematographers said, "Why do I need a Mexican? I already have a gardener." And I found my share of that. I mean, it's very hard to explain anyone from America the relationship between Mexicans and immigration. Every time I go through, I get very nervous. But now I'm an honorary Texan, so fuck it. I can go through. But the reality is, I think that we can look at where we're from and our origins and use them as a weight to put us down, or we can use it as a source of pride to elevate us. You know, I think our origins are a passport to travel the world, and they are not a thing that ties us. You can do. I think that we have through the years in Mexican cinema, Carlos Reigadas, Naranjo, Alfonso, Alejandro, myself, many guys winning Cannes, winning Venice, winning so many prizes, and conquering markets that are so different and so difficult, including the fact that now, if I was a young filmmaker growing up, I have different models. I can say I can make a multi-million-dollar sci-fi epic adventure, or I can do an intimate portrait of a Chicano family inside one home. So I'd say that use who you are. It's not only about Chicano, it's about identity, gender, everything. Use what you are always as a source of pride. And wear it as a giant fuck you to the world when they tell you that you cannot do something. And that's because I think that the one discrimination that is the most insidious is the one we apply to ourselves. You know, I was a kid growing up in Mexico, dreaming about making movies about monsters and robots and fairies, about whatever I wanted. And I did not follow a career that was that trackable from a Mexican filmmaker. And sometimes people used to ask me, what is Mexican about your movies? And I go, me. Yeah. So, you know, if fucking Bertolucci can go and do The Last Emperor and Milos Forman can do the story of Larry Flint, I can do whatever the fuck I want. So, you know, I bless you now do whatever the fuck you want and take a fucking hold.
Gracias, Guillermo.
Shit, I don't know how to top that question.
Well, you have a better throat right now.
First of all, thank you all for being here. I'm sure everybody, that's on behalf of everybody. That's really badass of you guys. A brief side note, my friends made me say this, that they call me the Mexican Ryan Gosling, except my six-pack is covered in tortillas.
I have a six-pack.
Huh?
I went for the keg. Fuck the six-pack. It's too little.
Viva Chipotle!
Viva.
Yeah, about the writing process, Ryan. It seems like this film was very personal. It involved a lot of your personal life and recall of your personal life. When you were writing this, did you think more about, what is the audience going to think about this? Or were you thinking about a particular person and a message to a particular person? And in what ways did the writing process for this film, are you going to approach your next film in the writing process a different way, or what methods are you going to keep and whatnot?
Well, I think okay. So, I've had good experiences with collaborating with filmmakers where we just try and make something that we like, and in a way you find out that you're not alone. And I've had other experiences where you try and make things that everyone's gonna like, and you feel foolish in the end to pretend to know what that is. Only you know what you like and want to see. And it's the only thing, I think, especially if you're going to direct a film, because you have to make, like thousands of decisions every day. The only place you can come from is what you, what you gravitate towards, and what works for you, And so, but the hope is not just to make something that satisfies yourself. The hope is that by making those choices, that you're not alone, and that people want to see that as well, I think that's, I don't know, right? That's the only place I know how to, because the other thing gets kind of abstract, and then you're just like playing the numbers and.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. For the only audience you can rely on showing up is yourself.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have to do one last one because they are doing this, and I don't think it means twinkle, twinkle, star. So
Okay, I hope it's good.
You go, and then I would like to say something and get the fuck out of here. So.
Okay, Ryan, thank you so much for making this film. I'm so excited to see it. You clearly believe in the value of telling stories about strong, complicated, complex female characters, but that's still not the norm in Hollywood and in the rest of the film industry. Why do you think that is, and what can we do to change it?
I don't know. I feel like I have complicated, powerful female characters in my life. It's just how I grew up. It's just it's growing exponentially, and so that's just the reality of my world, So those are the stories that I gravitate towards because they feel like more like my life, But I think there's a lot of great. There's a change happening for sure. You have, got these the girls from Broad City, or who are incredible, or Amy Poehler, or Tina Fey and Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. There's like and in music as well. It's definitely there's a tide change. I think feels that way.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank you for showing up. See the movie, and let's celebrate the arrival of a new voice into cinema, which I do personally, Mr. Ryan Gosling. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so for me, you pick your co-conspirator or conspirators carefully, because you're going to be with them in a very meaningful and close, intense relationship. And in a lot of ways, I've been lucky with that. Like, he never died. The director, Jason, he's just one of the more interesting thinkers I've ever met. I trust him indefinitely. Working with him as a director, you could just fall backwards. He's going to get you every time.